Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
Well, I'm doing well. You're apparently burnt out on podcasting because you've been doing 2 podcasts a day for the last, 30 days?
It's been a long Tour de France and Tour de France Homme and Tour de France Femme. But it's been really fun. Yeah. So I was doing the Queen Stage podcast for the entire every stage of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. So if you want to hear, recaps of every day, definitely check out the Queen Stage Women's Cycling podcast. Of course, I'm still doing Strong Girl Talk. We had a couple episodes come out in the last couple weeks, and we are here with the Consummate Athlete. So yeah, I'm a teensy bit burned out on talking, but honestly, actually really excited to get back to talking about training. I mean, I love watching the racing. If you didn't follow the Tour de France Femme, it was so good this year. I mean, it was tactical. It was down to just who had the legs. It sort of had a little bit of everything in there. And for the off-road people, it had all of our favorites. It had Marianne Vos. It had Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. It was just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly worth checking out. Now you'll do one more recap episode with the Queen Stage podcast as well, covering the Tour de France.
Yes. So yes, I am not going anywhere on the podcast front. We have a recap episode coming up later this week.
So if everyone could give that a subscription and a like and a listen, that would be great for that crew.
Deeply appreciated, yeah.
Now, we do have questions today. I think we have several. We'll see how many we get through. Some good ones around sort of 24-hour solo preparation. We have, remind me there, Molly, what else was on that list? That was the one that was top of mind for me.
That's a really fun one to talk about. Then we have one about TrainingPeaks Basic versus Premium.
Okay, a little niche, but a good one.
How high does heart rate need to go?
Okay, very common one, which is a great one, yeah.
And can I just do group rides?
Okay.
Which is also a very common, maybe not question, but thing that people do.
Okay, so now you've teased all of them. So we'll have to be efficient and stick to the outline today and not let me get too far.
You told me to tease them.
Okay. Anything else? So you have a Joyride girls event coming up. This is Markham, Ontario, near Toronto in Ontario. So if you're near that, what is that next week?
Yes, August 12th from 4 to 7 p.m. Joyride 150 in Markham, Ontario. We're just having a little girls' night there. No major things going on other than the fact that we'll be there hanging out, playing on bikes. We'll do a little girl talk around 6 p.m. We'll have snacks. So if you know a shred girl who has maybe been a little nervous about trying out any kind of biking, this is really a great chance to get together with some other girls, maybe make some new friends.
And I believe any woman gets a discount on that day as well?
Yes, women and girls get a discount.
Okay, so any age you can come. And then I think anyone's welcome at the park in any case.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't need to, if you're a dad, if you have brothers, whatever, everybody's welcome.
Still come and ride as you like. So that'll be good to sort of edge into that. If you haven't been to Joyride, this is a place that we encourage anyone in that area to go to and check out, especially as we get into fall and winter and work on those skills and actually ride your bike during the winter in Canada. So that's fantastic. No other events, I think, on the horizon here right now.
No, those are sort of the main things.
Okay. Well, Molly's got gaps in the schedule. So if you want her to come to your event, you can shoot those over to Molly.
To be clear, Molly does not actually have gaps in her schedule.
Fill that up. Keep her on the road. So
what are you trying to say, Glassford?
Yeah, we're just trying to keep you working. Okay, well, let's get into that. We'll sprinkle a payable ad in there somewhere. But otherwise, why don't we get in there? Which one do you want to start with?
I think let's start with the 24-hour solo. Okay. I think both of us really like this one. So this is someone
at the top.
Someone who's prepping for the Mansfield 24-hour solo in a few weeks. Mansfield 24 hours is one that we really love. It was Peter's first 24-hour, only 24-hour, I believe.
Well, solo. Yeah, I learned my lesson.
And we also really love Mansfield Outdoor Center, MOC. It's a really good place if you are in the, GTA, Ontario area, or if you're like looking for a place to come on like a few day visit.
Well, they have cabins and camping available, so you can bring an RV, you can do a tent, or you can stay in a cabin, and it's fantastic. Just the gravel riding is world class from there. So I would say any gravelers or even road is great from there. Even if you just stay at MOC, they have a great river you can camp in, a little restaurant now. They're doing a fantastic job. So I think that's a ad of sorts, but not an ad. But yeah, so this is coming up. This is, as Molly said, sort of like a return of a 24-hour that I did years ago and has sort of disappeared. It's a lower key one, fewer entries, but it is a 24-hour solo. So the nature of sort of going around a lapped course many times, usually just around an hour lap. And then we have this endurance challenge of how do you keep going for exactly 24 hours plus or minus, I guess. It's not exact then.
Yeah, and I admit this is actually the kind of race that I struggle with. It's the same reason Backyard Ultra doesn't really hold a lot of appeal to me. It just seems actually much harder to do a duration versus a distance. I would just find it really difficult from like a pacing standpoint and a just keep going standpoint because I like a finish line. Not that there isn't a finish line.
It is interesting. So you're saying how fast do you go because you might have a different amount of laps to go. And so it's sort of like cyclocross, I guess, where you sort of know your best case scenario. And then if you stay on the pace, it's that, or it could be longer, or you just get cut off is the thing, right? So you do sort of know a duration. And we do this a bit in training. You have 4-minute intervals, 20-minute intervals. So there is that. You do need to sort of select a pace. And so a lot of times what we'll tell people for pacing, so we're looking for sort of quick hits. This is similar to that question we did a couple of weeks ago, really, for it's the week of the stage race. What should I do? Can I train? This one's a little less, I haven't been training, more just is there last things to think about before I take on this 24-hour. So I would say pacing is just, you're not in a rush. The first half we say should feel boring is a good. You just should feel like you could go, you want to go, you're starting to doubt if you should go faster, but you can always make up time in the last half. So save it. And when you start getting, especially in that 24-hour thing, it starts at noon and ends at noon. So you get this 5, 6 a.m., the sun comes out. And that would be the time that you start getting a second or third or fourth wind. You're feeling better. The sun has come up. You're through the nighttime, which is a tricky period. And then you can empty the tank for the last 6 hours of this event. The last quarter is still there. So we'd like you to keep moving at that pace. So the mistakes people make would be to try and get caught up in the excitement, and it feels easy for the first 2 laps, and they just get carried away, and they're riding up way above the average lap time they're going to carry for this event. So they might do something like 50-minute laps, and they're really hour lap averages. And we'll see this in post. So you can always do the analysis afterwards and look at those lap times. Do you fall completely apart? You'll see people do 45 minutes, 45, 47, 48, and then hour 30, 2 hours, DNF. This will happen. So you want to try and avoid that with this just consistent. If the number's around an hour, we go with that. Now, how do you guide that in the moment? It's easy to say these lap times, but it's hard to pick that.
Well, I think your upside with a race like this where it's smaller is pretty quickly you're not going to necessarily be around people, so you really can ride at your own pace, at your own, I guess, decide ahead of time perceived exertion versus heart rate versus pace.
Sure. And so you need to know yourself and what you've been training with, right? You go by more perceived exertion.
Yeah, I don't believe in heart rate.
Now, I always say it comes back to feeling always, but if you did have power or you had heart rate, there's a few things that I think we all could agree on, no matter what camp or philosophy. If you're breathing like it's a 20-minute time trial, that's not a 24-hour pace. I think we can all agree on that. So at some point there's going to be a feeling. You're standing and smashing up this whole climb like you're in a World Cup is not the same as a 24-hour endurance race.
I feel like we could write such a good, like, he's not that into you, just based on things like that.
Okay. I don't know if I get it. It's like a rom-com, or is this like Mean Girls, or what are we talking about?
Kind of these like obvious things, like if you're breathing really hard, it's not easy.
Right. So these are, do you need a computer for that? No, just it's the talk test. But if you're standing a lot, most people don't even stand, but for some reason when other people are around them are standing or going vigorously, they're suddenly in the struggle. And again, boring. So sitting and spinning would be something. I know when I did Leadville, which was just over 6 hours, maybe some would say just under 7 hours, that was one of my big focuses for myself because I love to stand and smash, but I needed to preserve that later. So it was a lot of like sit and spin, relax, breathe, like just stay with it. And so having something like that where standing, you can still stand. It is mountain biking. You're going to have to stand periodically, but thinking about using your gears, keeping the cadence from being grindy. These are things you want to focus on early in the race. And then again, heart rate, we can probably agree there's got to be a % of max heart rate or threshold or whatever you use where it's becoming more like a 20-minute time trial or an XC race, a cyclocross race pace. We usually use around 85%. That's sort of the top of the tempo zone, usually somewhere in that range where it becomes more like threshold. Again, breathing would go with that. So we probably just stay under that. And I think for a 24-hour racer, a lot of times we'll even see lower. I know our friend Luke did a great job at the Albion 24-hour years ago, and I think he's a younger gentleman than myself, and I think he was using like 125 or 130 beats. He's fit. He's a fit dude, but I would say his heart rate probably goes to 190 or even could be 200, into the 190. So he's keeping it into this, 60%, so maybe under 70% is sort of like a rough thing that he was using. And so it would just be really getting into that easy gear for the couple of climbs on the course. And then he would ride really smooth and fast on the flats and the downhill. Certainly he wouldn't waste time. He's not just lollygagging, but just being careful that there aren't these surgy efforts that are starting to look like tempo, threshold, VO2 sprint efforts to try and extend that out the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then on the kind of practical logistical side, I think having a plan for A, what you want from the race, and then B, how you're doing that in terms of your stopping and refueling, changing, all that kind of stuff. So if your friends and family are there and you want to, throw down, but also have a good time, then by all means, like plan for slightly longer stops and maybe eating a sandwich or sitting down for a minute or whatever. But if you are truly going for how many laps can I get in 24 hours, a couple things to think about. Number one would be really trying to eliminate any non-moving time or as much non-moving time as possible. So that means being super efficient with your, when you do come in to the start finish and you're swapping your pack or you're grabbing some food or you're changing your bib shorts, which all of which are good things and worth taking the time to do if needed. I think especially if it's like wet out and it clears up, it stops raining, I think it's worth stopping and swapping out your shorts and changing into something dry. At some point you are going to have to refill your pack or swap packs or any of that. But I think going in with a plan for that ahead of time, have it written out. Like we usually have like a poster board that has
just the plan per lap. And it would be a lot of laps potentially. I mean, maybe not a lot, but it could be 24.
Well, so I was going to say with that, actually, it's even deciding how often you're going to stop. Are you going to stop every lap or are you just going to roll through and then stop every 2? And that would actually probably be my thought is try to avoid stopping every single lap if the laps are in that hour-ish range.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the 24-hour racers will chunk it up in some way. It probably depends on your mindset. Like maybe, and down ladders are really good. The human brain loves like, I'm going to do 6 hours steady and then I get a break. And then I'm going to do 5 hours steady and then I get a break. And I don't know if this is going to add up to 24 hours in the end of this, but you can see what I'm saying. Like
depends how long the break is.
You just keep telling yourself, well, this ride's shorter than the last ride. So I stopped at 6 hours and whatever, you change your shirt, whatever your thing is. And as Molly said, if it's super sweaty and humid out, then probably you might want to change your shorts as it gets into the nighttime just to try and avoid chafing issues and getting freezing cold. And similar if there was rain or something like that. But yeah, just trying to plan out your best case scenario and maybe the B and C scenarios so that people supporting you can help. But also when you come in, if you just have a bunch of Rubbermaids that are labeled lap 1, hour 2, hour 3, however you want to break it up, that way it's less thinking and less decisions. The decision fatigue is, we talked about that with Scott Fry when he was on here just a couple episodes ago. Decision fatigue is a big thing. So what we're trying to do is make it so that when you're on trail, you're making good decisions. But when you get in and you just take 2 bottles and a Snickers bar, there isn't a decision or there's very few. There's Snickers and what else would people take? I don't know. A handful of chips or a cookie, whatever. Peanut butter, whatever your thing is. Yeah, so you've planned all that out. You've hopefully tested all that. And then what I usually do on a course like that when it's laps is I try and have pretty regimented, again, to eliminate decisions where I'm like, should I drink or should I eat? It's like at the top of this climb, I coast, take my hands off my bars, stretch my back, and then maybe have a drink, or that's when I eat the bar, because now I'm at the top of the climb. Mansfield usually starts with the climb to start, and then it's pretty flat at the top. So maybe at the top it's like, and then the food goes into the mouth. So what you might do rather than sitting at the camp is get up the climb with everything and then just coast if you can coast. If there's a nice long double track or flatter thing you can ride one-handed, or just chew, take like a mental break there where you almost just don't try, but your bike is moving. That's the beautiful thing about bikes, is they just sometimes keep going on their own. So try and use that as, this is my break. I just don't try for this little section. And this is when I always eat. This is when I always drink. This is when I always stretch my back or get up off the saddle and give my butt a break. So trying to have these like regimented checkpoints,
regimented.
Thank you. Checkpoints throughout the lap.
Yeah. And then a couple other things in terms of your aid station thoughts. I think having a Rubbermaid that has all of your extras in it. So this is your extra kit, your raincoat, your windbreaker, your extra gloves, all of that, like an extra light, all of that kind of stuff at the ready in case you need something. Keep that extra stuff separate from the stuff that you definitely need, because it gets very confusing, especially whether you're digging through it yourself or if you have someone crewing you. It's very helpful to have those kind of separate. If you do have someone, whether you have someone crewing you or not, what we found actually the most helpful this last 100 I did was, instead of, if you're using sports drink mix, instead of using bags of powder and trying to scoop at every time you need to fill your pack or fill your bottles, we actually had a couple big gallon jugs that we filled with the appropriate dilution amount.
Yeah, like you pre-mixed your gas.
Yeah, exactly. So I pre-mixed my Tailwind into these big jugs. So that way, instead of having to try to dump in powder and now you've got powder all over the place, or you just get the mix wrong because you don't know how much is still left in a hydration bladder, and now you're like trying to add to it.
And I mean, I understand that because I do it, but like it is very nerve-wracking. I don't do well with fine motor stuff where it's like this scoop doesn't go into this bottle and it's everywhere. The powder's exploded and then
everything's sticky.
But then, yeah, you don't want to screw up your mix where you said I wanted 25 scoops in this gallon jug. But what if I only put 20, or because half of it disappeared into the wind? Then you're out there bonking because I screwed up. So what I liked is that you actually did your own mix. It's your own fault. And all I did was pour the jug in every lap into this pack and seal it up, and then away you go. So it really eliminated some of the decision and the fatigue for the support staff, because you had done that the day before.
And I think remembering that the support staff also is going to be fatigued, whether it's your significant other, your friend, whoever's crewing you. Most of the crewing, like the hard part, happens at night when you're having the hardest time. They're also having the hardest time.
They're up at a weird time of day and eating weird food for long enough now.
So I'd say, yeah, like keeping it as simple as humanly possible for them, so their chance of screwing it up is actually quite low. And that also goes towards making sure they have they have extra headlamps and stuff like that, so they can get around at night. I know that definitely becomes an issue when you're trying to like dig through and you can't find stuff because you don't have a headlamp. So if you don't have a headlamp for whoever's helping you,
we didn't do this, but you just reminded me that what would be probably good is to put up like a little light or like rig up a headlamp inside of the Rubbermaid bag, so almost illuminate inside your bag when you came in. That would be like a just in case the tent or whatever you're under doesn't have great lighting, to sort of augment things. Because yeah, it's definitely that searching around in Rubbermaids and bags for what you're looking for is, you don't want to do that.
It's such a both time suck. Like if you take an extra 2 minutes per lap, that's almost an extra hour in the course of a 24-hour, if it's like hour-long laps, right? But also it's so stressful. It's not like a relaxing time, right? Like it's not like you're sitting down kind of enjoying like eating something in a camp chair or anything. You're standing there probably shifting your weight from foot to foot, kind of like freaking out why the stuff that you need isn't there. So it's not actually helping you rest or recover at all. It's actually making everything much more high stress.
Yeah, so I don't know, week of, there's not a ton else. I think it's just sleeping, making sure your bike isn't going to have a catastrophic failure, make sure we've seen pedals come unscrewed and bolt checks. Don't tighten the bolts if they're already snug, but make sure the bolts are snug.
Charge everything, electronic shifters.
Your sealant should be checked to make sure you have sealant in your tires. Again, just things that are going to, it's hard to add fitness in this last week, but you can definitely screw it up by cramming training, having a bike that doesn't work, injuring yourself somehow. So it's just that trying to be bored in the week before. There's a lot of boring in these endurance races. The waiting is boring and you're very anxious. And then again, the first half of that race at least is just putting along, keep moving, tortoise in the hare mindset. And then full focus once you get into that nighttime, because that's a lot of times when the money is made is everyone can be fast for 6 hours, but it's the people that push through the night, not aggressively or in a risky way, just they don't stop. The tortoise keeps moving through the night, and then you emerge into the daylight and just keep it moving, right? But chunking that up, I think is really smart. Yeah, I don't know if we have a lot else. I think that's a great thing. I hope that race goes really well, given that it's a local one and a small one, and one that I sort of enjoyed in the past. So I don't know. Do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah, and keep us posted on how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. TrainingPeaks basic account versus premium. What are your thoughts?
So it's included with a lot of coaching levels. A lot of coaches will include it. If you get coaching through TrainingPeaks, they include it. We include it for our 2 highest levels of coaching. But then the basic account is free, and it works well enough. It'll accept all your data. You can take your workouts and put them to Zwift. It works pretty well. So a lot of athletes we work with who aren't on those 2 levels, so that would be our lower level of coaching, or what I call the monthly, but I think it's called essentials level of coaching. We'll use that. And some people will buy the premium account, and some will use the basic account. And so some of the what will happen is if you try and ever move something into the future, then you're going to get ads, and there's going to be ads that pop up. So usually what happens is people keep getting aggravated that they can't do things without getting ads from TrainingPeaks to upgrade. So
now it should be noted that moving things around on your TrainingPeaks is actually not the greatest idea from a training perspective. So I think if you're getting mad about the ads, that's probably an indicator that you're moving too many workouts.
Sure. So that's often the thing. And then you also can't, just to finish off the limitations, is you can't really use the commenting, like chatting feature of TrainingPeaks where you chat back and forth with your coach. And so that you'll try and do that, and then you get ads. And then what's the other one I was just thinking of? You're adding events. You can't see the charts, like the things like your performance manager chart and things like that. You can't see, which is okay. Some of these folks who are at this essentials level or this monthly level, they don't really need to look at it, and they probably are looking at similar charts and graphs in like a Garmin Connect or a Strava. So there are workarounds. So for some people, it makes sense to just stick with that basic account. We love the premium account, has lots of great things. I think it's an okay value. It's decent. But for some people, they are trying to sort of like hack their way through it or just sort of keep their subscriptions low. So we get it. So the couple things we do to work around that is if you do need to put something in the future that's, say, what you might use notes or availability for, then you can use an event. They do let you put events in the future. So a lot of athletes will put an event and it'll just be like a work event. And so we just have an understanding that I'll probably change it over to something else, but that sort of lets them put a little note in the calendar using the events feature. So that works for that. And then, as Molly said, you probably shouldn't be moving a ton of stuff around if you're, even if you're in a training plan, you probably want to follow the plan. But the limitation is just moving into the future. So I always say, like, you sort of just need to wait till you get to the day, and then you can move stuff back. And I think even to the tomorrow, actually, I always say that it's today or in the past, but I think you can actually put stuff on tomorrow, if that makes sense. So if today happens to be Monday, I could pull a Tuesday workout to Monday and do it early, but I can't say, I'm not going to do my Monday workout and move it over to Friday and say I'm going to do it on the weekend. So you can't do future planning, but you can do it today. So you just need to know that and just wait. So you can correct it if you really want to move your stuff around. I always say I'd prefer to just leave it on the day it was made and then you put in what you actually do as a separate workout. But that would be the main workarounds. I don't know. So yeah, we use like Strava and stuff for the charts that the athlete wants to view. And certainly the coach could send augmented feedback as well. That's not restricted or anything. But yeah, so there you go. If you want to try and save a couple bucks on TrainingPeaks and use the basic account, that's the way you would do it.
As with any of these subscriptions, I say try to use the basic account until you absolutely can't stand it anymore and need to do the premium. Don't just default to the premium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. Easy. All right. How high does heart rate need to go? I find it gets hard after 85% max heart rate. To which I reply, yes.
So you'd have to know the workout, but let's assume like sometimes I think you could almost boil training down to you stay under about 75%. We could call this zone 1-2 in sort of a 5, 6, 7, 8 zone system. Like this is your classic zone 2 is under some sort of 75% of threshold or 75% of max heart rate or some other lower intensity training. And then there's usually intervals, and intervals usually involve going over 85%. You'll see that a lot. So maybe it's at the lower end of that, which might be tempo. And then once you get up to say like 95% of max heart rate, that's moving. Like a lot of people won't be able to access that a lot of days of the week, which is good and normal. Like you shouldn't always be able to access your max heart rate. That usually is a sign that your fitness isn't super high, or your max heart rate is not set. And that's sort of the first thing would be to make sure if you're having trouble hitting something, it could be that your max heart rate is set too high or your threshold, whatever you're basing your zones are.
Which I think we've done full episodes on where we're talking about as you get older, your heart rate does, your max heart rate does go lower. Now it's not a perfect every year it goes down
one or
beat.
0.7 or whatever. No, but it then you'll see it. Young people will see this. They train a lot of hours. They're training, and it could be 10 beats. Similarly, you could hit a certain age and it could be related to lifestyle factors or just this is how your body solved the problem this year. We all know there's lots of things. It sort of just goes boom and it changes. Now, it's not immediately that your fitness changes because of heart rate changes, but that is sort of a little bit that what can happen is it does as the heart changes, right? It just can operate in different ways. But in the upswing when we're younger, it would actually be that your heart rate decreases as the heart grows stronger, bigger, and then we pump more blood via bigger pump rather than more beats, which is generally, that would be a good adaptation. But then you can also see what happens as we get older. The heart just doesn't want to beat as fast is sort of the idea, right? So gradually that does happen. So you will see people who either it's just set incorrectly because of, sometimes it'll even grab the max heart rate because you have an error data. You go down a big hill with a flappy vest, dry heart rate strap, and then it says 220, and then all your heart rate thresholds get updated, and then you think you can't hit 85% because you're using percent, but your max isn't set right.
So if someone hasn't set their max in a few years, I mean, how does one even set their max other than it just getting picked up?
Mm-hmm. So there's the good old go out and do a hard effort or a race and see what you consistently hit. I just look at historical data. You clear out the error data and you say like, what has this person hit for 5 or 10 or 30 seconds and sort of like look at that file and does it look pretty good? And assuming the person's been training and racing, that usually is like almost always that's close enough. Now, if someone, and we have a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s now where they aren't racing and they're not necessarily pushing themselves to the max, which isn't wrong. So then you have to get a little more creative. You might choose a threshold heart rate and base your zones there. And I like to triangulate because really the zones should be pretty close, whether you base it off a threshold or max heart rate. So you could always use threshold. So now you just have to do a quote unquote moderate 20 to 30 to 60 minute effort and see what the average heart rate is for that. And that'll be around your threshold heart rate. If you were a cyclocross racer, you could use something like that type of race, or a crit racer will be sort of like that, or a time trialist will have lots of efforts like that. So that would be ways you could set zones. You don't always have to set zones off of percent max heart rate. What would be, so these intervals we're talking about too. So say you do intervals and you just can't get up over 85%. You've cross-referenced, you're pretty sure in a race you can hit this 100% of max heart rate or the threshold value. So you think your zones are valid, but you still in training can't get over 85%. What do you think?
Well, this specific question, the guy is talking about getting to 99% of max heart rate in training.
Like they want to get to 99 or they
yeah.
can't?
It's a question about 5-minute efforts that are supposed to be fast efforts on trail. Mm-hmm. It's really, really hard getting to 99% of max heart rate. Is that what's intended?
Oh, yeah, no, never. Yeah, like you would, and this would be like the
First of all, you can't hold 99% of your max heart rate for 5 minutes. Like if
let alone 5 by 5 minutes or whatever it was. Yeah.
7 by 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, you can't do that. That's just not possible.
Right, because you have to look at the total volume of the workout, and this is where pacing would be bad. You could hit 100%, but that means all the other intervals will probably not be great, right? You're going to fade from that.
Yeah, like when you look at the zones, it's not just zone 1 is this percent of max heart rate. There's also usually like a little note with it where it's like, you're going to hold this for like under 10 seconds. You're going to hold this for 30 to 60 seconds.
And zone 1 would be like hours, like 24
Yeah.
hours. And then zone 2, you get into hours still, but fewer hours. And then zone 3, usually you'll see like up to say 3 hours. And then zone 4 is threshold. So again, that's like your 2x20. So say
you're like 60 minutes.
30 to 60s, 30 to 70 minute of work, maybe something like that. And then what's above that? Zone 5. So your VO2 max. Yeah, that's going to be sort of like up to say 21 minutes of work roughly. So you just have like 5x3 minutes. So they usually say 12 to 21 minutes. There's a bit of error bars there, of course, but those would be like the interval sets you'd do for VO2 max. A VO2 max test is usually in that range, right? Like somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes.
And this is why perceived exertion is so much easier.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, if you've tuned into that, like I'm supposed to finish this set. So long story short, I usually say like if you can get your heart rate into 85 to 95% while you're in the interval. So not necessarily even on interval 1, but it might actually be on interval 3 you get into that zone, into that range of 85 to 95%. But if you can't get there, then we'd want to look at your fatigue. Are you one of these people that is always going over zone 2? The cliche of endurance training. Are you always training moderately? And then we talked about this a lot in the last couple episodes. Now you're regressing to the mean, which maybe folks don't know. Like that just means that everything is moderate. Everything is coming towards the middle, regressing to the average of your training intensity. So your easy training is becoming sort of like zone 3-ish, tempo-ish. And then when we try and go and do VO2 intervals, you're tired. So it becomes more like zone 3, slow, moderate type of intervals. So what we want to try and do, you could call this polarization or just keeping your easy days easy and your hard days hard. So that you'll see. And then the other thing you'll see is people are under-fueled. They're fasting or they're whatever, high fat, something like this. They don't like taking any fuel on. And so they're feeling sluggish. They're not recovering and they can't get their heart rate. Like these are the symptoms of, you could say, overtraining, underfueling. This would be the setup, right? And perhaps you want to be on a high carb diet or do fasting, but the
high fat diet,
right?
Not high carb,
not the end. Yeah, but then the side effect. There's always a consequence. Everything that we do has like a side effect, and so the side effect is that you can't push high intensity, and it's going to feel sluggish if you do that. So you need to sort of decide which way are you trying to steer things, and then what else are we looking for? Again, even if you did very muscular things, maybe you went for a run or you did strength and then you try to do your intervals the next day, you could be very muscularly tired. If you're muscularly tired, it often is the perceived exertion is high and it's very hard to get heart rate to get pushed up. The muscles aren't going to challenge the cardiovascular system would be a way to think about that. Or maybe the other thing would be your cadence could be really low. So you'll see that people will go up a big hill, their cadence is 60. They think to go hard, you need a hard gear. And so they use 60 RPM. But if your cadence is low, it's a very muscular effort. It's hard to challenge the heart. So then the heart rate doesn't go as high. So what can we do? I would say if you find yourself in an interval and you feel a little sluggish, you can't get the heart rate up over 85%, you're supposed to be doing threshold or VO2 or hard, fast intervals, then you would take a gel, keep the cadence up, make sure you're not going into like a tailwind or something, like have a nice section of trail that you can really push on. That's a hard section that there isn't a lot of coasting. And then put on some good beats, some music to motivate yourself. And you should be able to get that over there. And then if you can't, then we need to look at the training in the last week to month, the fueling in the last week to month. And then also I would do a good review. Maybe this is a good idea to book a phone consult where we can look through your data and set your zones based off of endurance rides, threshold tests you've done, races. We can always triangulate like rough zones. That's not rocket science. But that would be a situation where if you're struggling like that, that is a good thing to check in with someone. What would be the other thing to check in? Like your doctor, like blood work, like do you have anemia or something, right? Like I'm just always sluggish and tired. So this is why tracking heart rate and doing intervals is good, is you can start diagnosing like, oh, something's not right in my routine here. I'm going to have to change it up and be open to sort of tweaking my approach to this and see what changes.
Love it. Okay, last one. Let's hit this one quick. Group rides. Can I just do group rides to get fit? Why or why not?
Well, I like to say you can drive a car with your feet if you want to, but that doesn't make it a good idea.
You can do anything for 6 weeks. I mean, we've
That's
got
also
a lot
true.
of cliches. Yeah.
A lot of so yeah, I guess it's hard. You go to a group ride and people seem fit, and there's some people that do it all the time, and so that's great. It's good for them. And it does depend what your goals are. I think you're right. That's probably the more applicable saying.
Depends what your goals are and what your group is. I would argue there's some really great groups out there that they have a really casual ride on Tuesdays, and then they have like a hard ride on
It's basically a guided training plan.
Yeah, more or less. Like there are training groups like that, and that's great. I would say the more frequent person who is like the more common reason this question gets asked is because every group ride is a
race.
Yes. I was going to say something much less polite, but yes, race is probably the simplest.
Sure.
Something about measuring, just yeah.
So I think when we're early to riding, maybe we only get out once or twice a week and we go to the group ride. It's social. We're probably learning things. Like when I came in, I was very lucky. Our club was pretty supportive. There's a lot of really experienced riders. And so I learned lots about group riding, and you get these little tidbits about training and everything else.
Well, and if you have any interest in racing, especially if you're talking road, but even mountain, you have to ride with people in order to be able to race effectively. Like that's just...
It's the closest thing to access to a race would be a group ride. Now, every group ride is different. It could be 2 people going on a ride up to 100 people in what is that called? There's like a drop ride where you're getting dropped, just like a race. So it's a disorganized race basically. And there's that whole spectrum, 2 friends going out and riding together. And I think people would call anything in between there group riding. So I would say you want a mix of those. But so yesterday, let's go through. So the issues that eventually will come up, maybe not in the first 6 weeks, as Molly says, everything works for 6 weeks. So it's probably great training for at least 6 weeks of your year to just enjoy group riding. And maybe the group does like an easy ride some days, and then a harder days, there could be intervals or laps of something or whatever, the no drop ride, the big weekend long ride, probably good. Now, what you'll notice is there's a lot of coasting often. And then, as Molly said, there's always surging. So even on the easy days, it's going to be super easy coasting, really low averages, well into zone 1. People might call it zone 2, but there'll be no time spent in zone 2. They'll be really easy, and then a bunch of surges. So almost like anaerobic intervals, sprinkled with really easy pedaling at low cadences. So it's just not what we would necessarily picture when we're picturing zone 2 or endurance training, steady training. You're not really accumulating any time there. And then the other thing you'll see for a lot of people is that the amount of intensity, again, doesn't really accumulate time. It's sort of like a kitchen sink or maybe not. It might be one super hard hill at 5 minutes, almost like Strava style, just racing for 5 minutes. And then maybe no more intensity for the whole ride, or maybe just a tiny bit of tempo, but not, again, we talked about tempo being an hour to 3 hours of work. It might be 30 minutes of tempo and then 1 5-minute effort, which again, for 6 weeks is probably good training, especially if you're newer. But eventually that isn't a stimulus. That's not 5x5 VO2 intervals. That's not 3x20 tempos. It's not progressing necessarily if it's the same route. So what you'll run into is it's hard to keep progressing, and you'll actually start seeing some regression if you don't sprinkle in the training that's appropriate for you once you get to a level that you need appropriate training, right? Enough training load that your body keeps adapting.
For sure, yeah. So it really is a balancing act. And I mean, there are also a lot of people who are uncomfortable riding alone outside. And honestly, depending on where you are and what your comfort level is, that's a completely legitimate concern. Mm-hmm. And in those cases, yeah, there is like a blend of group riding and indoor training that can kind of work together, even though funny enough, like those tend to be like our least favorite things.
It could be. I always say, you sell what you sell. So, I mean, I sell coaching and training plans. So, but group rides are included in almost every one is like an important caveat. It's not that we hate them. And certainly everyone indoor trainers, and there's download files in every workout pretty much that we put in now. So I think these are essential things, and you have to solve it for your life. So there are people that live in a city and have 5 till 6 a.m. to ride, and I would ride the trainer indoors in the city. I don't go outside at night, basically. So if it's dark, I'm probably not going outside.
I like that you're counting 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. as night in this.
You got to be careful. Yeah, I go outside sometimes here, and we don't even live in the city, and I'm terrified.
Also, it's like 7 a.m.
We all have our issues and our fears. So what I would then start doing is we would intersperse something like once on the weekend, you do your own ride, maybe with a friend who's like-minded and similar fitness, I rode with 3 or 4 friends here on the weekend, and it was a great endurance ride. I never went over 75%. Very good. The average and the normalized power are very close, which means the variability index is very low, which all that means is basically we pedaled most of the time, even though it was a gravel ride. So that's what we're looking for. A lot of times what you'll see on these, especially city-based group rides, is the average is 90 watts and then the normalized power is 200 watts, which the only way that happens is if there's 400 watt, 500, 600 watt surges, these anaerobic efforts that are pulling the normalized power up versus that average, because the average is going to be more affected by the zeros, right? So that variability index, that VI, which you can see in most of the softwares, that's a thing to watch because we want that to be pretty tight. We want the ride to be steady is all I'm saying when we're doing endurance training especially. And then again, for the more advanced rider, we got to find a day, and that could be a tack on to the group ride maybe if you're quite advanced, do the group ride and then we do intervals or intervals and then the group ride. We have to find a day in the week that you're actually getting pushed enough to push like a 2x20 interval workout, 5x5, whatever the intervals are you believe. We sort of need those in there to keep your fitness progressing, whether it's just to win the group ride, quote unquote, or because you actually have other goals outside of your group riding, which is ultimately the thing to look at too, is are we trying to do really well in this group ride? Or are we trying to do well in a race? And I think in either cases, it sort of does paint a picture that some of days of the week have to be at your pace, whether that's easy enough or hard enough or a bit of both. You do need to have those sprinkled around those group rides for sure.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's wrap up there. And again, hit us up over on consummateathlete.com. We have a contact form. We'll include it in the show notes. Consummate Athlete on Instagram. Rate, review, subscribe, all those things. Very helpful. And yeah, keep the questions coming, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.